And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted. Lisa Saurs, thanks very much for joining me. How are you today?
Hello, I'm doing great. It's Friday. I love Fridays. How are you?
It is. So I wanted to just dive into memory lane. And I love having people from different areas within this space just to talk about what they've done. Everybody's got a story to tell. And this conversation is totally unscripted. We met briefly prior to, and we have a vague idea what we're going to be talking about. But this is the beauty of this type of conversation. So walk me through memory lane, how you started in the space, and then how you turned into marketing, and then how you built your own consultancy firm.
Sure. So, started in this space, I would consider my space to be cybersecurity and event cybersecurity at that. So, the conference circuit, the summits and talks, FP schedules, my life and social calendar runs around the cybersecurity conference circuit calendar. So that's my scene, and I've been in it since 2015. I was hired to run the marketing for, at that time, a small startup that was a cybersecurity staffing firm. Now they're a super well-known player in the field, placing cyber talent. And through the course of bringing that marketing program up and building it out, we got to do hundreds of events and all kinds of talks and conferences around the country and speak about the challenge of hiring cyber talent. That aligned really well for me because the first half of my career, I like to say, was as a recruiter. So right out of college, I got recruited off a monster.com resume, which puts it in time and space. The monster.com in 2005 was the thing to do. It wasn't LinkedIn jobs yet. And
Lisa, I have to
yeah.
not to cut you off, but I share that with you. My first ever job after college was through Monster as well. So we both
Yeah.
are Monsters veterans or
Yeah.
survivors, so to speak.
Yeah, the anonymity of it still surprises me because I got a call saying, "Oh, you do sales? You do phone stuff? Okay, yeah, just come in for this interview in West LA." And I'm like, "I have no job, fresh college grad, definitely didn't have money for parking. Got there real early so I could drive around for an hour and find a free spot." And interviewed in the Veteran Building, which, if you know anything about LA, is just in the heart of it in UCLA Westwood Village. So parking was literally $20 for an hour, and I on myself went into the interview and got walked out with the job. So that was my first professional role. I say I had to show up suited and booted at 7:30 in the morning and working in a bullpen environment, doing phone-based sales and placing network and systems scopes back then. So to put it again in time in the industry, one of my big clients at the time was MySpace. Puts a point on where tech was at. Cyber didn't exist yet. And so fast forward a few years, I did some stuff in telecom. I dabbled in mortgage a little bit, taking those kind of sales and marketing skills to a few different industries and managed to loop back around to tech and cyber in 2015. So that looked digging in and figuring out how to lead a marketing program and full-time reports, the whole digital marketing strategy that we need for companies today in 2024. And in 2019, I went to grad school and got my master's in digital marketing from Full Sail. So I did that online while I was working. And that was pretty hard, but it was really fun and it was a good experience. I wanted to challenge myself to make sure I knew what I knew. Like my graduate degree is literally something I can hold in my hand to defeat my own imposter syndrome and to say, you did great. You knew exactly what you thought you did. And obviously there was a lot that I learned and that I've been able to implement from that, but it was a very validating experience to go to school after already being in the role for a while. And then in 2022, yeah, I made that shift. I got married. I adopted twin brother cats. It was a big year. We traveled for the wedding and the honeymoon. It was a good time to go into business for myself and be able to have that schedule, that work from home life. And I managed to hang on to the cyber industry by a pinky by getting cyber clients and working volunteer roles, really active in that, I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, I've just managed to stay in it. Now I'm job searching for my next director level, heading up the marketing program for someone in the cyber field. So targeting a lot of different types of orgs in that search.
So there's so much to unpack, Lisa.
Yeah.
We're going to try to unpack that. So you also moved from Los Angeles to the Midwest as
Mm-hmm.
well, which also made an impact on you. So you've gone through a lot of changes in your life, in your
Mm-hmm.
personal life as well as professional life. And so let's unpack a few of these milestones. So first and foremost,
Sure.
it's super interesting. Your job as a recruiter, again, this memory lane, but there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, it's definitely challenging. You talk to people all day, you're trying to figure out what it is they want, what the skill set they want, and how to market them and sell them to your potential employer. And that's a fast moving target as well.
Oh my
And
gosh.
was that a on the job training? Because you coming out of into as you mentioned, the first real job.
Hmm.
Talk to me about that experience and what, first and foremost, what you learned from it. Because again, we just glanced over it, but I'd love to get some of the key takeaways from doing that for a few years.
Sure. I'm realizing when I smile real big, it moves my AirPods. So I'm like fidgeting with them. I think maybe I'm going to just take them out so that we're not fighting that fight.
Hmm? No, it's
You're still hearing me okay?
yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I feel like I've got a pretty interesting story going even further back, which is that I grew up in a itty bitty town in the Mojave Desert. It's called Trona. Shout out Trona, California. Graduating
What's the
class of
population, Lisa?
2000. Say again.
What's the population?
My graduating class was 19 people.
Wow.
The population when I moved was under 1,000. It was probably 900 something. It's an old Western company town that mined borax and dried up in the mid 1900s. And they still have a little tiny population there today that has a chemical factory that a lot of folks work at. And even more people drive to the next city over. There's a naval weapons center there, as well as a community college. So that played in later. So I graduated third in my class of 19 and then went to community college. I wanted to defer the expenses. Honestly, that was a huge piece for me of not going to university right away. I was accepted to a 4-year school and looking at the finances of it, borrowing $25K starting at 17 years old. I'm a September baby. So when I graduated high school, I was 17, not even 18 when I started college, and I'm signing away 25 grand a year. That just didn't seem smart to me. And so I went to community college. I ended up having a absolutely wonderful experience there. I'm a huge evangelist for that. And I had instructors that really cared, really dug into what I wanted out of a career and helped guide my path. And at that point, I was pursuing psychology, social sciences. I got into UC Santa Barbara with honors from community college because I enjoyed it and worked hard, and then ended up changing my majors because at Santa Barbara, the psychology major has to do anatomy and work on cadavers, and that was not my jam. I was more interested in the thought, behavioral stuff. I went social sciences and did my minor instead and graduated in women's studies. And while I was in school, I was working as a telephone fundraiser for nonprofits. I would call up little old ladies during dinner time and ask them to re-up their membership to the ASPCA and the LA Times and different .orgs. And so that was my first taste of the difference between a commercial company, a nonprofit company, job opportunities in the nonprofit space, in the telecom and phone dialer space. I literally just had a job interview this morning and was like, I've scripted dialers. I didn't think that experience was going to loop back around, but here we are at 2024. We're still using dialers. So you never know what those early jobs are going to give you, but those were all hourly, no benefits, that kind of stuff. So I consider that first real job recruiting. And that was me after Santa Barbara. Not a sustainable place for a young adult to try to start their life. It's hard to afford it even with student loan money coming in. It's a very beautiful, expensive place to live. So I moved to LA. I had a lot of friends there from going to school just an hour away, and was able to get a job after. It did take me a couple of months, like I want to say 3 or 4 months after graduation, or after moving there rather, to get hired. But yeah, it was always sales. It was relying on that phone sales acumen of, I'm not scared to pick up the phone. I'll call anybody. And I picked up a job order my first day on the phone as a recruiter, which you get hired in. It's about, you're looking for lightning in a bottle is how they would put it. You're looking for,
No more. You mentioned you're looking for that pizzazz,
yeah, that
the
lightning in a bottle, that
light in the bottle.
sharp, charming, quick on their feet salesperson that can keep a technical manager on the phone long enough to get into their business pain points and talk about open hiring, headcount. But it was a very different climate for that 20 years ago. We didn't have LinkedIn ads. We didn't have really Indeed.com. I think maybe had only just started. Like, Facebook didn't exist. So many hiring tools that we have now, just it's a totally different climate today. And that was my pivot into marketing was intentional because I am a digital native. The first time I touched a computer, I was like 8. My first cell phone, I was like 16. Like I've had technology my whole life. It's been writing on the wall. That's where things are going. So for me, starting in phone sales and realizing that my communication skills is an acumen that I can parlay on, translates to writing, and that translates to content and marketing and messaging and branding and social media and event planning and all those things. So it was actually a very natural progression, but it did take a very intentional hard right turn for me to go sales, marketing, and do the digital marketing pivot and get upskilled on that.
But that background in I would say hardcore sales
Yeah.
has really given you an edge, I believe, because if you were just strictly doing marketing, first of all, you don't know the essence of the struggle that a salesperson has and what it is, what it means to have somebody like actually get their attention. Because I think we're 2024. It's all about how can we grab somebody's attention.
Yeah.
And from everybody who's so ADD to focus on what you have to say in your message.
Yeah. And it's not that part never stops being challenging. If I could solve that, I'd have as much money as Elon, but it's always going to be hard to figure out how to get the right messaging out. Marketing is about the art of persistence without annoyance. How do we stay in their ear? How do I remain top of mind? How do I be the solution someone seeks out without having to be the buzz that's constantly pestering? And writing that fine line is the difference between great and good marketing always. And for me, that was where it made sense for me I look at it as a pivot, even though you're right, it is an evolution, honestly. The kind of marketing that I do is referred to a lot as sales enablement, which nowadays just looks like digital marketing. Digital marketing is sales enablement because it's sales funnels put in a dashboard that everyone can use with trackable data and shareable resources for collaboration. And so it just, the world grew into what sales used to be in handwriting. We used to have to sit in a hour-long session every Friday, and we call it the candidate roast, which there's no actual roasting. We're not making fun of anybody, but it was like we're all coming to dinner together, family dinner, and everyone brings their candidates for the week because we had a set number of this many interviews per day, this many phone calls, contacts, messages left, etc. And so at the end of the week, who'd you meet? Who are we representing? And the team would just share all the notes. Here's how much they want. Here's the role they're seeking. What clients do we know? What leads do we have for them? And just that collaboration piece, that still happens in person a lot, especially in sales teams. But now it can happen online constantly. It can happen at a moment's notice. You don't need that whole week to prepare it and pull your resources together. It's all in folders and it's just instant. It's enabled in a way that technology just made it inherent.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes total sense. And specifically, talk to me about after that, you moved to the Midwest from Los Angeles. How does that impact you from a professional as well personal life?
Yeah, I had the jump on COVID, but 2 years. I didn't have to wait for the pandemic to have my LA exodus. My kitty's trying to be in our video.
And then we'll welcome your kitties to join, by the way. Now it's my fault. Scheduled pickup of something. I don't even know what scheduled pickup is. So you moved to, coming back to our conversation, you moved from LA to the Midwest, which is big
drastic.
Drastic.
Yes.
Talk to me about that. How did it affect you personally as well as professionally?
Yeah. I had the jump on COVID. I came out in 2019. So a few years before the pandemic started, although there was mass exodus for sure once that happened of people leaving, just because the cost of living, first and foremost, is not sustainable for most people. And even if you can afford it, what you can afford is probably not the lifestyle that you're seeing on TV. Living the LA dream. You spend a lot of time in your car. I loved living there. There was stuff about it that I super miss. I have friends that are family there, not to mention my Dodgers. But I can watch the Dodgers on TV and we have planes, and my mortgage is less than my half of the rent was in LA. The reason was apparent from the jump, but I have tons of family in the city that I relocated to. My parents are both one of 5 kids, and my dad's entire extended family with his brothers and their kids all settled in this one central Illinois town. And so I moved out here for a change of pace, and I was working remotely. I was able to make that shift without a big disruption to work. The big change was mentioning events on the outset of our conversation. I love doing conferences and shows and stuff. And when you live 2+ hours from a major airport, that is tough. So that was the big change for me work-wise and the impact of living out here. And then personally, though, honestly, it worked out pretty great. I moved out here, and 2 weeks later, I met the guy that became my husband 2 years after that. Between meeting and marrying him, we bought a house. So yeah, I own my own home now for the first time at 41. And although we bought it when I was 39, so technically managed it in my 30s. But yeah, living in LA for 10+ years, I had genuinely come to believe that I would not ever be able to own a home, and that it was just not a reality for me if I was going to stay there, because if you're not willing to do condo life and that kind of stuff, it's actually not very realistic. And I like dogs, so I wanted somewhere I could live. I had a dog. He's no longer with us, but we joked, this is puppy's retirement home. So we got a big backyard on the house. So maybe someday we'll put another dog back there. But for now, we just enjoy the space. I live 2 blocks from a lake, and I can walk around outside. It's beautiful. My spring garden's about to bloom. I've never owned a garden before. The reasons are numerous for being here. And from a business standpoint, Chicago is a really exciting market to live near. Recently, so I'm the social media lead for WeSys Chicago, which is Women in Cyber. And I'm the director of chapter events for Raíces Cyber, which is just newly announced a White House partner, actually, for Latinx representation in cybersecurity. So those are my volunteer gigs. And because of that, I'm always tracking the Chicago cyber scene and event planning and stuff, especially with my WeSys team. And so I put together a Chicago cyber calendar and shared it on LinkedIn, and it got tons of engagement. I don't know how many people are following it. It's not about collecting email addresses. It's just about being helpful for the community, because I'm tracking that stuff anyway. I have to follow it and keep an eye to know when it's coming so that I can do my marketing. So I'm just like, here, everybody, I made this thing if anyone else wants to use it. And like, Chicago is so busy. It really needs something like a calendar to track it, because with all the groups, there's literally 10 things a week sometimes that you could go do.
Yeah, Lisa, I'm trying to keep track of everything so I can ask the next question, since it's challenging because you do so much. Let me talk to you about one thing is this pro bono work you do. Talk to me about what you believe in, your social causes. Like, why do you give back so much to and you professionally as well as socially? Like, you're looking at making an impact with your capabilities, your skill set, and then contributing a lot of this time, that your precious time, to these causes. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Growing up in a small town, I think, puts you in that mindset from a really young age of being community minded. And I've always thought that my approach to volunteerism is rooted in that. I was a Girl Scout my whole childhood and went into literally like every volunteer opportunity I could in high school, from prom chair to homecoming chair, math club, a really active extracurricular kid. And college, the same clubs and recruiting for different causes. I think it has to do with just trying to make sure that people that need help get it. And coming from a really impoverished, low income area, not very many people end up in college, let alone with master's degrees and these tech careers and all this stuff that I feel like I've been able to achieve. And the people that are coming into our field in cybersecurity in particular, I have a real soft spot for their struggle and their challenge, because coming from recruiting for basically 20 years, I've seen hundreds, if not thousands of people who are just hitting this brick wall trying to get in the door of the industry, they have certifications, they have industry, maybe even some experience, some volunteering, they have degrees, maybe they don't have all the perfect things, but they've got some selection of the right pieces, and they just can't figure it out. They can't get that job. They can't get on the radar for that first step into the door in cybersecurity. And so I just can't stop working on that challenge, like whether it's volunteering, whether it's the jobs I seek out, whether it's the work I end up actually doing coming from recruiting. Like it just always, my talks, if you look at my YouTube channel, like all the workshops I've led, it all has to do with getting a job, how strategies for job searching, how to hack this system that's so jacked up for people, things you can do to stand out. Like it's all resources and knowledge for those job seekers, because I've seen that struggle firsthand. I've been in that struggle myself. I made that pivot into marketing with great intention, because that job that I was in as I was job seeking for a new career was not fulfilling. And I was like, it's another sales job. And if I go look for a job, I'm going to get another sales job. And I don't want to be in sales anymore. I don't want to live under a quota. It doesn't fill me with joy in the morning. I'm like struggling to make myself go to work. And making that pivot for me, just that small shift from sales into marketing stuff. I read the newsletters that land in my inbox. I'm excited to go to industry conferences. I love giving talks about my subject area. I love talking to junior people in my field and mentoring them. Like working on the things you actually enjoy is a fundamental shift in your happiness at work. It can give you so much more value professionally and personally, so much more fulfillment than just doing a job because you need work. And we don't all have the luxury of doing what we want immediately, but that's where taking those small steps can add up. So in my case, it was going to community college for web development and trying to make that pivot, like layering my skills. It might look like something different for other people.
And it's amazing to see that you align your personal goals and the personal beliefs with your professional alignment as well. That by itself, I think, is a contributor for happiness.
You have to
work in a field that you believe in, and then you contribute to the space you believe in, and you helping people because you come from that background. So it's really, really nice to see that. So I'm just trying to figure out where to go from here. So let's talk a bit about maybe the current events and talk about the current struggle that a lot of people in the industry, seems like the tech industry is going through some turmoil, and there's a lot of variables, and I'll just list those and then you can chime in with me. First and foremost, we've seen a shift, so where digital transformation accelerated through COVID. I would say that everything is digital now. It doesn't really matter where you are. You can be in the Midwest, but you're generating content that is being consumed by everywhere. And it's more so now than it used to be. So unless you have that digital presence online, from a branding perspective, from marketing, from a company perspective, you're nowhere. So that's number one. Number two, a lot of hiring happened through, during that COVID time due to the insane valuations of some of these tech companies that were based on, not necessarily on revenue, but based on just valuation of how much money they raised. So they went through this hockey stick of hiring spree, and now they're shedding some of that. There's another form factor that is you can't miss, is the integration of AI into our fabric of our day-to-day being. ChatGPT 4, there's a lot of AI engine now, so the need for content creation or the need for a whole slew of marketing teams and just in sales in general is, I wouldn't say diminished, but definitely you can still use a diminished framework of a marketing and sales team and then get more out of them. So there's a lot of these factors. And again, I would love to be proven wrong and having this conversation. And if you don't agree with me, absolutely. So there's a lot of these factors. And then this is what's causing, and you can see that if you look online or LinkedIn, every position, any great position has 300, 400 candidates. And more. And if there used to be a lot of noise, it used to be maybe 200 unqualified candidates and 10 qualified ones. Now is the reverse. Now you get 200 qualified, or still quite a bit. The quality of the candidates, I would say, have gone up.
The volume is high.
The volume, but also the quality. I would say there's a lot of very highly qualified people out there that are not necessarily, employed. Why? Because of due to the whatever changes that happen. So these are all external factors and things that I've actually been captain obvious maybe of declaring these. this is not a gripe call. We're not here to discuss. These are things that are beyond our control. Talk to me as somebody who is in this journey and has the pulse on what's happening and has the
Mm-hmm.
you have a unique experience because you're also a marketer, you're in cybersecurity,
Yeah.
and you're a recruiter. So you come in with a wealth of knowledge of all of that. I would love to get your opinion of the status quo, what we have today, and then
Mm-hmm.
more importantly, what can we do about it?
Yeah. Yeah. Really good questions. And I can actually bundle them all together, not to
Let's
minimize
do
it,
this.
but it's
Let's
the digital
let's do it.
enablement and digital marketing and AI and digital adoption. They all go together because take, for instance, one of these orgs I'm speaking with, I'm going back and forth with them about maybe a consultancy because the work that needs to happen actually needs to happen before they can hire, because otherwise they won't be able to get the right hire in place. So we're at a point where we're provisioning tools, we're figuring out what needs to be implemented versus what needs to be shed. We're looking at multi-year MarTech stack planning, which is our shorthand for like all the technologies that make your digital marketing sing together. And then you step back 10 feet and look at it and say, okay, but the sales team doesn't know how to use it. So we just spent untold hundreds of thousands of dollars and there's a mismatch, right? It's a pipe like this and one goes like this and one goes like this. And so everything's just falling. And sales is over here like, why is it so quiet? It's like they're not connected to each other like a pipe is supposed to be. And so a lot of companies are getting in trouble with that. And the growth was artificial. They shouldn't have added so many headcounts. They did that because learning is slow and hiring can be fast if you're looking at short-term solutions. So leaving it to their FTEs and permanent long-term employees to upskill on all of this new ecosystem of tools wasn't feasible in all cases. And so they hired people who do that. And then they shed a lot of them, but you'll find that the experience or the performance does suffer from that. I use X as an example. It's not a good one because we had this whole kerfuffle with PR of all these big companies leaving, but my experience, just politics and finances aside, my experience as a user of tweeting is not as good as it used to be. The tool doesn't work for me as well. My responses are not as high. My engagements have gone down. My views are down. Objectively, it doesn't work as well. I blame some of that on the shedding of moderators, the shedding of people that are keeping bots out. The instances of spam and spam reports have gone up for me. And that's just one tool. And it's the worst example, but I've got other examples from other tools. So that's something else we've seen, that there's been like a bloat that's had to be pared down, but then they went too far when they pared it down too. So that's one piece of it. The other piece.
And
Yeah,
listen, just to expand on that, it just shows you the dynamic, the turns of events, and how we rely on tools to get to the audience. But these tools are not static. Google search, X, Shorts, Instagram, TikTok, all of that is dynamic and ever changing. And we cannot rely strictly on one type of strategy or one type of content. And whatever worked today, within 3 months, 90 days, might not work.
Exactly. Yeah, and Google is a great example because anyone that's studied advanced analytics will feel my pain. It took me a month to get my Google Advanced Analytics certification, and 6 months later, they implemented GA4, which is a complete overhaul of the analytics ecosystem, and totally invalidated my certification that took me a month to get. And that's just, we're Google, we're just going to change it. Like, it was announced a few months out, but it's not something you can really prepare for. You just got to relearn it. And I end up in those conversations a lot with leadership saying, you'll never annoy me by needing iterations. I will edit to infinity. I will always be willing to go back in one more time and final.psd.ftl, like all the file extensions, because there's one period off. That is how the marketing and graphic design side of my mind always will work, of like wanting it right. It's worth it to me to do. I don't care if it's 11:57 p.m. and I want to go to sleep. I will make it right if it needs to be done before the morning. So you need to have that commitment to your craft a little bit, I'll say, to make it corny. But also this, we'll use AI to replace people. That's a fallacy. Someone's still got to drive the car. AI can drive itself, but it can't parallel park. It can't pull into a parking garage. It can't pull into a ferry boat. There's a lot of stuff that you still need people's hands on the wheel to, those are metaphors, but people's hands on the wheel still need to guide the ship. You still need the strategy that comes from the top down. You need those tools set up correctly. You need to train your algorithms. You need competent strategic hands on the wheel. Now, someone like me that is willing to do 5 jobs because I'm a one-man band marketing, I can do it all. I don't want to do that. I can. AI makes those jobs easier, but I'll tell you what, no one wants those jobs. Those jobs are not appealing to people, even when we can do them. I don't care how much money you're throwing at me. I'm already married. I don't want to marry my job. I want to go to work and then go home. And the idea that we're going to give ourselves over because we think we need more and more tools, we got to work smarter than that. We need to be like thinking, paring down and using more with less, doing more with less instead of just always adding. More spending is not always the answer. And 9 times out of 10, I can look at a marketing strategy and be like, have you addressed these couple things that would be easy wins? And it's on the list. And like, I looked at one last week. I said, your CAPTCHA covers your LinkedIn. It looks like you just don't have a LinkedIn page. And he's like, when did we make that change? I'm like, just settle it and it's fixed. I discussed, I said, it seems like your LinkedIn relative to your other following is lagging a little bit. Do you guys know why? And he says, I don't know. And I already knew because I'd already run this audit. And then we get to the next slide. And I said, have you noticed this? He says, oh my gosh. So sometimes it just needs another pair of eyes.
Absolutely. So to add difficulty, and we go back to the whole getting a job thing, is that the tools have changed, but also I would say the preference on how we consume information, how we make decisions, that's also changed quite a bit. I would say even in the past 2-3 years. I would say that a lot of our buyers are now everywhere. They're not necessarily on Google. They're on, I would say, maybe some WhatsApp group. They're on
TikTok,
Slack channels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and I would say they also do a lot of research on their own. And by the time they're ready to make a decision, they're already 80% there, and they don't necessarily want to talk to anybody. They want to consume it wherever they are. So they, when they're shopping at Target, or they're on treadmill, or they're like, picking up the kids from school, or taking the dog to the vet. That's so a lot of that changed too. And then I find that, just like you describe, a lot of people are creature of habit. They're doing things a certain way, and then the train is moving to the next station and stopping to no one.
Yep. Yeah, I call that. I think I learned it in grad school. I don't think I'm pioneering anything here, but if I am, I might actually write a book on this or something. But I call it seeking the know.
I would say take credit for it.
Okay.
Either way.
Because that is true. And the data went out that most people have opted out by the time they get to your call to action or your buyer's intent statement. And so I want people to opt out. I don't want to spend time on false leads. I don't want to spend time when it's a marketing lead and I'm looking for sales qualified leads. I want people that are ready to get into buying decision conversations and book meetings with me. And excuse me, if I don't create the collateral, whether it's on my website, my social medias, my video, whatever, out in the community, if I don't create that information that says, that's not for me, then I'm going to get a lot of those. Could it be? Could we make it work? I want interest. I want partnership. I want collaboration. But if I'm selling something, I don't want people rolling up to the tractor store looking for lawnmowers. Like, we want to be marketing ourselves the right way. We want to make sure people understand what they could get out of us. So I'm looking for a no. I want someone to be like, no, I'm good. Because everyone that's left is still walking around the store, right? They're still thinking about it and seeing if it makes sense for them. Those are the people that then, hey, can I help you? But the easy ones have already taken themselves off the board. So you're saving time, you're saving resources as a sales team.
And should we do that too for our own personal brand and our own personal, even from a job seeker perspective?
That's how I treat my website. I will admit that I actually made the mistake early on. I went into consulting in 2022 and I just was like, okay, I just resigned from a job I've been at for a really long time. I'm getting married in 3 months. I'm going to do some consulting work. I had 2 contracts lined up, so I wasn't just like flying out into the void. But I was definitely like, how do I market myself as a service provider, as an individual service provider? I'm a company. What does that look like? And I initially just riffed off the idea of monarch butterflies. I've written a blog about the monarch migration, being from Southern California, Dia de Muertos, like the marigold thing. It resonates with me. And so I named my company Monarchery, which no one can pronounce in hindsight. I would probably name it like Midwest Cyber or something super easy.
Lisa, I can tell you it has nothing to do with the success of the business. You can call it any way,
Yeah.
and I have testaments for that. I work with companies nobody else
Nice.
can pronounce. This is still very successful.
Yeah, I realized that I can use the monarch thing as a as a symbolic influence, but I really needed to market myself as a cyber marketing person. And once I made that shift in my own branding strategy, I got more talks accepted. I got opportunities presented to me to get involved with conferences and events. I got work. I got contracts. I haven't yet landed a full-time job out of it, but we're working on that. And that's a continuous improvement. I literally make changes to my website every month. If I'm not blogging, which I don't do enough of, in fairness, and there's not really a good reason for it because AI makes it easy. I just am distracted like all of us. But I did add my YouTube videos. I added some stuff about past talks. I'm always trying to do something that at least is enhancing and getting. I think about it like a place to put all my past work. Once we're out of school, we don't really think about how to put a portfolio together. But if you get into the marketing field, you have to think about it because you're getting asked for it a lot. And so I just started treating my website like my portfolio and putting all my work there.
And it's super interesting because in the past, the legacy thing was like, oh, you should always update your resume, even if you're not looking for a job.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, what you're doing is you're updating your portfolio, you're updating your brand, you're updating your presence, your digital presence online on a continuous basis, regardless of what it is that you're working. And it sounds like you are spending the effort, even though you're very critical of yourself for not doing enough. You are spending the effort of, aren't we all, exactly. But you are making the effort to make sure it's current and it's continuously valid.
Yes. Yeah. And that there's even I cleaned up this week. I went and cleaned up my YouTube profiles because I realized that I had one was initials, one was a name, one was an org, and it wasn't clear who to follow, what, where, for what content. And because I am in a few different things, there's my women's content, there's my diversity content, there's my job seeker content. I want people to be able to find that and use it. And so if I can't find it, they can't find it. So I went and cleaned that up. But yeah, just I try to keep myself busy with little projects like that. And that kind of stuff, speaking about the volume of job seekers, I can actually speak directly to this because my most recent contract, which just ended a week ago, shout out to the Backrack Group. I was partnered with them to launch TBG Cyber, which was their cybersecurity recruiting division. And a good friend, colleague of mine, Amy Knoll, and I launched that. She's still there. But the work we did there was all about getting into new companies and getting them to work with us on hiring cyber talent. And so picking up those jobs for something like, I'll give the example. The first one we worked was a red team lead. The person needed to run all the penetration testing within the org and to interface with the other departments as the head of red team technologies and go to events for that, which is like the dream job. If you're a red teamer, it's ideal. Like I get to get paid to pen test. They're going to send me to Discord. They're going to send me to DEF CON. I get to work from home. We got clobbered. We got probably 2,000 responses in under a week. From that volume, we had maybe 15 people that actually had the required skills for the job. So to your point, there is maybe a higher volume for some jobs of applicants. That is a rare case. That was a remote job. It's a team lead. They're going to send you to DEF CON. It's got all the things. It's going to get all the applicants, right? They are not going to struggle with traffic. But it was then a case of whittling down the right person for the job, the right temperament, the right skills. It's a law firm, so it's a very unique culture. Someone amazing got that job. So that process worked because they got a huge amount of applicants and we were able to fill that job really quickly. I think we did the whole deal from job order to like, congrats, it's your job in less than a week, which is
Could
unprecedented even today.
do you think that they cast a too wide of a net? What,
But
I mean,
no, initially they hadn't cast the correct net. They actually had it titled like senior intrusion detection engineer or something, and changing it to red team lead made all the difference, because the initial one, they were getting applicants that didn't have the leadership, didn't have the business skills, didn't have the law exposure, legal industry exposure. So no, although that can be a big problem too. But yeah, the volume thing it hasn't, for me, in my opinion, it hasn't necessarily impacted the quality. There's still, honestly, there's 10 times more resumes to go through, but there's the same amount of qualified candidates in the pile somehow, even with 10 times more resumes. And whether that's because qualified applicants have a harder time finding it because it's so noisy, or because so many unqualified people are on the job market and they've heard people say, if you're 60%, just throw your resume at it. I don't tell people that anymore. That is not the world that we're in anymore. You can't, and Mel, friends and family get me on this for myself a lot, where they say, have you tried? Have you looked? What about, you would do great at that. We don't do that anymore. The hiring climate, it is, unless you know someone that's going to bring you in as their apprentice to something you have no experience with, you are going to be absolutely stonewalled trying to get into a field. I won't talk about anyone but cybersecurity, but you are not going to have success landing a cybersecurity job if you have not done some work to prepare yourself. You're going to apply for 1,000 jobs and you're not going to get a single interview.
and Lisa, define what do you mean by done some work?
Sure. Preparation could look like a lot of things. And that's where my website, circling back to that, that's my example of, look, even if I'm not in the full-time role leading a marketing program, these are still all the things that I've done. This is what I'm capable of doing. I'm doing this even in my free time. I do it because I'm interested in this stuff. Literally, I took Myers-Briggs personality assessments and put the results on my site, because that's the kind of thing that a marketing leader would lead the rollout internally for an org. Let's do this to work more collaboratively. So I'm eating my own lunch. I'm doing the things that we're going to do on the job by myself to the extent that I can as an independent person out here just interested in marketing. Cyber is the same. So do you have a home lab? What are you running? What sort of ranges are you in? What's the last time you entered as capture the flag? Have you submitted to speak at a conference? Have you volunteered at a conference? Do you go to meetups? Do you go to online meetups? Do you know where your local DC group meets? Have you done literally anything to get yourself involved? It's seriously just a matter of finding it and showing up. And it doesn't have to look like event participation, although in my opinion, that's one of the smartest ways to do it, because then people meet you and they like you and they give a what about you and want to see you be successful, and you're not just some person on the screen. But in cyber, it's actually, there's a quantifiable way to be preparing yourself, which is, what are you working on at home? What tools and technologies have you gotten yourself experience with? You may not be able to work with huge commercial Palo Alto, expensive $1 million stuff, but you can learn about it. You can read about it. You can learn what load balancing is. You can do it. The fundamentals can be there, so that when you get in that interview, it's, I've done this. I've prepared all of these things. I've researched it. I know what you guys use. Let's do this. So much stronger than just someone help. Like that helplessness. No, you don't get help anymore. It
is, yeah. And first of all, this was phenomenal. I think you're spot on. And this came out a couple times from the past conversation. And right now, the barriers to entry is you. And I'm talking about the candidate.
Yeah.
There's very little money, but with effort, because it all depends on you, you can set up the tool set and to get the experience, generate the experience and the acumen that you need to land that job. But it requires being active about it. It requires some lifting. And I think a lot of, especially in this type of environment, I think people cannot just rely on luck and circumstance and be that 60% match. Those days are over. But there's no excuse. As you mentioned, you have all the tool sets available to you. And if anybody's listening to this and looking to land as the next cybersecurity gig, I highly recommend you rewind what Lisa just described, and then just dissect it and follow that path to success. But it's not, but it's not trivial. It takes time and it takes effort.
Yeah.
So none of it is trivial, but the onus is on you. Don't be like, don't just come out and say, oh, I need to get a job, because there's no excuse. I think everybody, and I think because of the availability of all this, what you just described, because there really is, even from a monetary perspective, there's not a lot of investment you have to do. There's all these free courses, even on the, and everything else is available to you.
YouTube.
Tons. So this is great. So this was super, super helpful. So move forward. Let's dive back into the marketing space.
Okay.
We agreed on the changing buyer behavior, right? We agreed on that. We also agreed on the dynamic of nature of these tools and the dynamic nature of the environment we're in. What can companies do today to better themselves to become more attractive to buyers? How can they, using the tools they currently have and the staff they currently have, become better at selling? Because again, speaking specifically for cybersecurity, right? Because that's your expertise. There are 4,000, 5,000 vendors. There's probably about 25,000 different products out there, or product lines. And so landing and breaking through the noise and landing the right client is not trivial. So it takes a very succinct, concrete, and focused effort to get to the client, perception, and, as you mentioned, mind share, and get them to understand what it is you're selling, and then pull the trigger and actually go out and become a customer. So it's a long-winded question to get overall kind of strategy. What can you do today?
How do you attract talent?
Well, how do you start from becoming success? You're a vendor, you're a cybersecurity vendor, and you are facing all these challenges, the headwind. Like, there's a massive amount of vendors out there, noisy environment, ADD buyers.
I gotcha.
Digital environment, all of the above. So
how do you get your message through?
Yeah, how do you get more sales and more qualified individuals, the people that have the need, have the budget, and are willing to pull the trigger and become a customer? I know it's a big question, but and if you knew 100%, you'll be, as you mentioned, you'd be absolutely unbelievably rich, right? If you knew the formula for that.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I had to plug into a power source here. Let me get this camera on the right. Yeah.
What is the secret sauce for success, Lisa?
What is the secret sauce? Good messaging. That was my vote. I put myself through grad school on betting on good messaging, and assuming that having the right means of communication and approaching people on the right platforms would get the job done.
Lisa, do you know good messaging when you see one?
I think everyone does.
Okay.
I think everyone does, because you can look at it and intrinsically understand what they're trying to accomplish, and whether or not it applies to you. And that, again, going with the opt-out approach to marketing, I'm saying I want to know who I don't need to work with, or what I don't need. It helps me hone in on what it is who I'm trying to reach. Saying this isn't, recruiting is actually a super easy example of that, because we get really nuanced positions, right? I am working with a candidate that is a security engineer, experienced blue team lead with these credentials, these certifications, these bona fides, looking at a company that needs someone like that. So I'm literally sourcing based on who works with those kinds of tools, who's in those fields that apply to the technologies that person's skilled in, and who's the lowest lying fruit of all, who's advertising that they're hiring for this person. In recruiting, a great recruiter is going to know about those opportunities before they hit the open market, because you've got those relationships with those managers who say, hey, I'm excited, I've got a head count, let's get it going and work together. That's what you hope will happen as a recruiter, is that you're getting those calls before anyone else gets them. But opting in and reaching through in the last 2 years, even, I think has actually even shifted again, because to me, the brands that I want to be in business with, and the brands, if you look and see who's really got great market share right now, they're putting authenticity and being earnest front and center. I think that COVID was a very revealing time for people in that they reorganized their priorities. They reevaluated their relationship to work. They thought more about the balance of what they're accomplishing in their personal life and the time that their loved ones are getting versus the time that their employment is receiving. And I think people made a fundamental shift and decided that a long commute with low pay and toxic workplaces don't work anymore. And so the companies who are the least that are standing out the most. And in the war on talent, you could say the war for talent, the companies that are the least BS are winning. So being in the communities, so cybersecurity, for instance, let's be really specific, being in Discord. It's a little thing for a company to do, but are you even on Discord, bro? Advertising on Reddit, being in Mastodon, like these things that if I'm not to put down the C-suite by any means, we love them because they write our checks. But if I'm a white shirt in New York who is trying to hire hackers in Kansas City, I may not understand why supporting B-Sides Kansas City matters. Who cares? It's some piddly little thing. To the hacker community in Kansas City, B-Sides Kansas City matters a lot. So it's putting that community desire first and foremost in cyber and realizing that we need that support. We need the certifications. We need the conferences. It's not just about having fun. They're actually learning events, but they're also fun in a very stressful and challenging career field. It's good to have fun, and that's okay. We can allow things simply because they're fun, but those events also are huge networking opportunities for us to get in the same room with each other. Like, we're from all over the world. It's not that easy to get on the phone together, but it is pretty easy to just all have dinner at a table and like shoot the breeze for the day of who's doing what, who's working on what, and make those casual connections that then turn into the more formal stuff.
Yeah, and it sounds like what you described is that it's, again, fundamentals win, meaning the authenticity wins, be able to understand the buyer's persona, what it is that they care about.
Yep.
Specifically. It sounds like, if you to quote from Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message.
Yeah.
You got to pick the right vehicles to get to the right audience. And again, this is a moving target, meaning that you have to constantly have your ear to the ground, figure out what is happening, because it changes so quickly. Let's say you land a all-encompassing marketing role.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? And this is an off-the-cuff question. What do you do the first 30 to 90 days? And then more, how do you know you have an impact, a positive impact on the company?
Marketing is nowadays the kind of marketing I do. It's easy to gauge success in some cases because it's very data driven. So there's numbers that say numbers good, numbers bad. That makes it a little easier. It's like math, right? It's very black and white. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance in deciding what those goals look like. And that's where the magic of collaboration and leadership comes in. Those first 30 days are really understanding the strategic goals of the business. What is the message? What is the call to action? What are our big picture plans? And what are the little steps that we intend to take to get there? How do all of the business units piece? Because marketing, I say, is actually, it's not a vertical, it's a horizontal. Marketing lays on top of every other business unit, and we have to be able to collaborate with all of them at the same time sometimes. So we have to be able to speak to the software developers, whether they're domestic or international. We have to be able to interface with the C-suite a lot. We have to be able to work with the sales teams a lot, especially sales leadership, to align all of those messaging and goals into one cohesive KPI, which key performance indicator, for anyone who wouldn't know that, is the metric we use to say this is good, this is bad, or measurement is the KPI. So building to those outcomes looks like a whole system that you start with. What are we trying to achieve? Going into the analysis of what are we currently doing, and then layering on here's my 2 cents. which is where you hope you're not dealing with any imposter syndrome, because you need to be able to really make bold decisions and say bold things at that point, like this isn't working, or your strategy is not good, or your marketing is backwards. I looked at one recently where I'm of the opinion that their website is talking to their community and their socials are talking to their clients, and they need to flip it. Their website should be speaking to the business that they're selling and the clientele. Their social should be their community and what's in it for you to join the fun, because that's who's on social, right? Not necessarily the purchasing decision. So fundamental stuff like that, you need to be able to say, listen, I know you guys are all great people, but from a marketing standpoint, this is not being done correctly. And here are my recommendations. These are the steps we're going to take. Here are all the people involved. Here's our budget. Here's the timeline. I call it reverse engineering. So you take the event or the deadline and reverse engineer it. If we need X rollout by this date, May 1st, that means that by August or by April 21st, we need to be doing this. By April 14th, we need to be doing this. And you're building it backwards from today to your endpoint, going in reverse so that you can see how much time you have. And so you're always in one of those or 100 of those processes at any given time as a marketing leader, but you're building all of those pillars out. And that involves all of your content strategies. So whether that's events, whether that's digital, all that stuff's included.
And how do you manage the relationship with the business unit and then the executives that you report to make sure that you're aligned and make sure you get what you need? And also, I'm assuming that sometimes you have to have difficult conversations like you described,
Sure.
saying that there are certain things we need to change. And maybe, again, it's like everybody's resistant to change. They'll say, well, we've been doing this for this way for so many years, and why should we change? How do you manage that 360 selling or marketing to your organization as well?
Yeah, you can't always convince people. That's one of the frustrating things. It's just because you're right doesn't mean you're going to get your way. So that's one of the first pieces of professionalism, in my opinion, of leading a business unit, is learn to take a no with grace, because you might not always
pick your battles, Lisa.
Yes, that is a key piece. And that really is a good foundation for the answer. Pick your battles. What is fundamentally going to trip you up versus what is fundamentally going to influence positive changes? And it should be data driven. That is how you get an irrefutable yes, because a business leader is not going to look you in the face and say, I know that's going to save us time, money, labor, and cost and effort and everything, but let's just do it the hard, expensive way. Like, they're going to have to come back with their justification of why the hard, expensive way is a better idea if you come ready with your facts and figures of why your solution is actually going to outperform whatever that norm that's set in place is. And you would hope that as a job seeker, as a digital marketing person, you're going to enter into a partnership with your leadership that is going to have an open two-way policy where everyone's opinion gets respected for the subject matter experts that they are. We're going to stay in our lanes, and everyone is going to do their job. Now, does the real world always look like that? No, of course it doesn't. We're dealing with all the different temperaments and levels and experiences, and you gotta be a pretty agile communicator to be a business leader, period, marketing or any other department aside. You need to understand how to have different gears for different people. You need to be able to put your emotions to the side, because you're not always going to be in happiness conversations. That was something a lot of my leaders worked with me a lot early on, because I am a Virgo and I'm temperamental and I'm an oldest child and I like to get my way. Learning how to take a no with grace or deliver messaging in a way that doesn't seem entitled. It's a business skill. But in marketing, we have to super practice that, because we do end up doing a lot of delivery and needing buy-in. And in my opinion, that will always come back. Your success will be driven by your strategy. If you come back to, hey, everybody, let's roll it back to point A. We all agreed that this was a strategic choice we were all going to make together, right? Okay. So from that supposition forward, here's how this needs to work. It can go one of a few ways. And I treat it, I don't want to say it in an insulting way, but treating it like the toddler thing, where like, give them some choices. Do you want green beans or broccoli? Instead of, I don't want vegetables. Like, they have some choice, some agency in the matter. Managers do well with that same sort of treatment to a degree of, do you want this option or that option? And so you don't get none of them. I don't like any of it. It's like, we got to do something. But so giving a range can be a really good strategic approach to dealing with that kind of buy-in.
It sounds like these soft skills because are very
Yes.
important to success.
Majorly. Yeah.
And there's not necessarily things that they teach you in the master's program because it's very different, but it's very important as well. So this has been phenomenal. Last question before we part ways, and it's been really great. What excites you in this space of cybersecurity marketing? And where do you see this industry going? Because we've gone through all these changes recently, but things are not stopping. We've seen a lot of automation to good and bad, chatbots, AI generated content. There's a lot of things in play from a marketer perspective and specifically for cybersecurity. Where do you see things are going? And any particular, I'd love to finish with a kind of a positive, even though we had some gripe content here, but positive conversation and positive outlook. Anything that you can share?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what AI does. I think it enables us to move further faster. I think it lets us do more with leaner teams. I think that it will create a lot of synergies between departments that don't always have a way to communicate with each other, just in ways that we can't even understand yet. They haven't been invented yet. And that digital transformation is always exciting to me. I've managed to have the luck of writing a few waves of transformation in cyber. The first was going into web, joining recruiting in 2005. I was in technology in 2008 when web just blew up and Facebook became a thing and Instagram became a thing. Like, I've been in tech through all of that, and it's been awesome. It's been really cool to see all the new careers that came from that. I think that's something that we're going to see too. And I think that's a reason why we have to fundamentally figure out this hiring challenge, because we're about to have even more jobs to fill. They're going to backfill and support all these AI tools and technologies and automations that you mentioned. And they're going to pay really well. And so there's great opportunity there for financial impact for millions of people. They just have to get ready. They have to get their education and skills where they need to be for these positions. And a person can get ready by simply just looking at what's posted online. Just look at the jobs that are out there now and start guiding your own self-directed learning in those paths. Pick a bullet point that you don't understand what it is and go pull some blogs up on Google. It's literally as simple as starting there. YouTube is a huge resource for free training, free learning. I know literally hundreds of people who've taken their own career in their own hands and made an intentional pivot, whether it's into cyber or anything else in tech that I've interfaced with, by doing self-directed online learning in their own time. It is completely possible. It is not simple. I'm not minimizing it. It's hard. It's time consuming and it's stressful, but it is possible. And I think that these tools are also going to create the opportunity for us to reevaluate those jobs where people are wearing 2 or 3 hats. I don't think that's sustainable. And so maybe if we can actually make each of those individual positions and reduce the cost of labor through the increase of tools adoption, there might be some plays there for increased labor force. So I'm all about opportunities for people to make money, get to work, stay busy, contribute to the greater good. And I think that the technology wave in the next 5 years is going to create a lot of opportunities around that. As a marketing person, that's exciting. I don't love the idea that this thing is being invented to replace me. But like I said, I think we're always going to need people to drive the car. Even if the car could drive itself, it's not always going to be able to parallel park itself. You still need a hand on the wheel somewhere just to make sure we're not running through the crosswalks and stuff. But yeah, more and more my job is less actual doing marketing stuff and more interfacing with other business leaders and then having the tools do the stuff for me. So it is a bit of a shift, but people that are prepared for that are going to be able to, like, I was like, oh shoot, things are moving online. I should figure out social media. I should figure out email marketing. And my timing ended up being perfect for that. So if people are listening to this and they're trying to position themselves for 2 years from now, that's where you want to be looking, is the intersection of technology and AI with what's out there right now, and then how AI is going to influence or change or replace what exists today, because the people who manage those systems are still going to have to be hired.
Lisa, that was a phenomenal answer. Very impactful.
Thank you.
My view on things that we'll be able to parallel parks maybe 10 vehicles all at once with AI augmentation. But before we part ways, what's the easiest way for people to reach out to you? And how would you define your ideal client or the ideal position or somebody that you would love to work with? What does that
Yeah,
look like to you?
director of partnerships for Last Mile. If you're listening, Last Mile Fund, come hire me. I love the work they do. They're the ones that are partnering with the federal government to connect these cyber learners into the jobs. And anyone doing that with workforce development that needs two hands on the wheel for digital enablement, whether it's sales enablement, digital marketing strategy, web development. I'm not much of a coder, but I can use any tool you put in front of me that's got a good user guide. And I'm really easy to find. I managed to recently snag my handle LRK Saurs, LRKSAURS, Gmail, and I'm also LRK Saurs on all the platforms. Excited to get my proper email recently. It hadn't occurred to me to go try and grab it.
Phenomenal. Lisa Saurs,
Yeah.
thank you very much for joining me today. It's been enlightening for me personally, and hopefully for the viewers. I highly recommend reaching out just to say hi, just maybe even comment and respond to this conversation. And until then, for all those who join us, thank you very much for taking the time to view, and stay safe online as well as offline. I'll see you all in the next episode.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. Appreciate you having me today.